So, morning, Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Basra, Daf Kuf Vav Bava Basra 106. And today's Daf Yomi is dedicated for a Shemir for the Chayalim, Chatzah for the Shvuyim, and a Yeshua for Am Yisrael in this Ace Tzara. So the Daf Yomi is going to continue the theme that we're discussing. We have been discussing a person who sells the property, and he says, Mida v'chavel, meaning exactly by the rope, versus a person who sells the property, and when he sells the property, he says Yasser v'chaser, or chaser yasser, which means more or less. But today we're talking about a different scenario. We're talking about a person who is standing on the base score. He's standing on the He's standing on the earth, and when he's standing on the earth, he looks at the field and he says the following. He says, I'm selling you this base core offer within these boundaries, meaning to say, this is a base core, but it's within these boundaries, and it's not exactly a base core. So he says the Mishnah, B'simanav u'meitzarav. So then, pachos mishtios higio. So then if he's off by less than a sixth, then the sale is valid. But ad shtus, but if it comes up to a sixth, then you knock it. If it will be, we'll see exactly if it's exactly a sixth or more than a sixth, but less than a sixth, it's a valid sale. And more than a sixth, he's going to deduct from the price if the discrepancy is more than a sixth, because he gave the person a significant amount less than he had promised him. But here, this amount of up to a sixth is significantly more than prior. If he had said more or less, he was allowed a quarter kav for each seya, which is 7.5 kavim for core. But here in this case, it's going to be significantly more, because a shtus is 4 times the amount. It's a kav for each seya. So it's in a base core, 30 kavim. And so what's the reason why he's allowed much more here? Because here he's standing there and he's looking at it. So therefore, he's going to be allowed the seller is going to be allowed a much greater discrepancy because the buyer is standing there. So in Marafuna Amar, Rafuna taught shtut, let's say it's exactly a six. So basically it's exactly a sixth off. So under these circumstances, Rafuna is going to say that the shtus, that if it's exactly a sixth, it's going to be considered like pachos mishtus, and the sale is valid. It's considered like it's less than a sixth, and it's not a significant discrepancy. He doesn't have to deduct the price, and the sale is valid. Whereas Rav Yehuda says shtus kiyoser mishtus. If it's exactly a sixth, then it's going to be considered like it's more than a sixth, and he has to deduct from the price of the sale. Rafuna Omer shtus kapachos mishtus. Rafuna says if it is a sixth, it's going to be considered like it's less than a sixth, and the sale is valid because hachikamer. This is what the person said to him: pachos mishtus v'shtus bechlal. This is what Rav Huna said. Rav Huna said that if it's less than a sixth, and including a sixth, higio, meaning to say up to a sixth, and including the sixth, the sale is valid, and you don't need to deduct anything. But yoser mishtos yinaka, but if it be more, you have to deduct. Whereas Rav Yehuda's other position, shtos ki yoser mishtos, if it's actually a sixth, it's like it's more than a sixth, and you have to deduct, because this is how Rav Yehuda reads it. Hachikamer pachos mishtos higio ad shtos, from one sixth up to 1/6, it's included. V'shtus bechlal yinaka. And if the 1/6 was included, you need to deduct it, because until 1/6, meaning to say including the sixth. So when it says ad shtus, but the sixth is included, meaning to say the sixth is something you're going to have to deduct. So Rav Huna is saying that the 1/6 is like less than a sixth, and you don't have to deduct. And Rav Yehuda says the actual sixth is like more than a sixth, and you'd have to deduct. So the Gemara says, Meisvei, let's bring a question to challenge Rav Huna. Again, what's Rav Huna's position? Up to 1/6 is considered like less than a sixth, and you don't have to deduct. But we have a teaching, and this is a teaching that's taught with respect to what's called the Shuma Dayanin. This is a case we had in Ksubos, Daf Tzadi Tes Beis, where it talks about the fact that the Shuma Dayanin, that when the judges, if there is an estate of Rahman al orphans or a widow, and the judges have to sell the properties off to fund the estate, and let's say they made a mistake in their evaluation of the property, and they went beyond 1/6, then we're going to say the sale is going to be canceled. So under those circumstances, that's the context of the Tosefta Meisrei B'simanav U'B'Meitzarav. So the Brisa says that, let's say a person sells to his friend his field by the markers, and then he says, I'm selling you this base core, and he gives the markers, Pirei Shtus or Hoser Shtus, and he was more than 1/6 off, either in either direction, either to the seller's benefit or to the purchaser's benefit. We're going to say Hareu Kushum Hadayanin and Higiu. So then it's going to be like the case where the judges evaluate it, where the judges sold the estate of their orphans for the on behalf of the widow or the children, and we're going to say that there it's a valid sale, and the sale is not canceled. So we see from here that they compare, that this Tosefta is comparing this case of the base core, which was off by 1/6, to the case of the Shuma Dayanin. And in that case, the Shuma Dayanin, the Shtus ki yoser mishtus, we know that in the case of where the judges sold it and there was a discrepancy, if it was 1/6, it was exactly 1/6, we're going to say the sale is canceled. And so too over here, we're going to say that 1/6 should be considered like more than a 6, and you should deduct from the price, just like Rav Yehuda taught. Gemara says, but wait, there's one problem with this source. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna says, but according to you, it says if it was more than 1/6, this and it says in the Tosefta the sale is valid. You just have to deduct. But by the Shuma Dayanin, if it's more than a 6, or if it's 1/6 or more, the sale is canceled. So how can you compare the case of the base score to the case of the Shuma Dayanin? So therefore, the Gemara says, no, El Shuma Dayanin, below Shuma Dayanin. Yeah, in some cases, like the Shuma Dayanin, in the sense that 1/6 is considered like more than a 6, but it's not like the Shema Dayanim in the sense that by Shema Dayanim the sale is canceled, but here the sale is not canceled. And that's what the Gemara says. It's like the Shema Dayanim that the exactly 1/6 is considered like more than a 6. By the Shema Dayanim, it's not like it exactly, because by the Shema Dayanim the sale will be canceled. But here in this case, you deduct from the price, but the sale is not canceled. And so we see from here, this is therefore a proof against Rav Huna. So it's going to be like Rav Yehuda, who says that the 1/6 is going to be considered like more than a 6. But the Rambam Paskins like Rav Huna, nevertheless, even though from the basis of hold on one second. So Rashbam has to change it around a little to explain why this is not a proof for Rav Huna, but not a proof for Rav Yehuda, but a proof for Rav Huna. And by doing that, he takes out the word Ella. He takes out the word Ella from the Girsa. Okay. Okay, anyway, so we continue at this point. Rav Papa Zabin Ara Mehugav. Rav Papa bought a piece of property he bought a piece of property from another man. Amrle, so on top of 106b, so the seller said to this man, said to Rav Papa, Havia Esrin Giruye, Havia Esrin Girive Mashle. There are 20 steya here that I'm selling you. But he says, look, I'm selling this field, it's 20 seah. But there really were only 15. So Asla Kameh to Abaye. So if Papa came to Abaye, his Rebbe, and he wants to, basically say, what's the law? Do I get money back? Normally Savras the Kabbalist. Abaye says, no, you accepted it, you get nothing back. Mara says, V'atanam, pachos mishtosi giyuf. But didn't we say that if it's less than a sixth, the sale is valid? So therefore, an ad shtosi nake, but once it's a sixth, you deduct. And so to here says, since the amount is going to be more than a sixth, for sure, he should deduct from the price. So Abaye says back to Rav Papa, Hani mili echid lo kimle begava. That's only in the case where the purchaser does not really know the property, but where he really knows the property and he knows for sure that it's not exactly the amount that he said. You accepted it. You knew that this wasn't the exact amount. Mara says, Esther number. So our Papa says, but he told me 20. Yeah, it doesn't mean 20. I'm related and it means that it's as good and it produces fruits like as though it be 20 seah. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer. So now we have a new sugya. It's related, but we're not going to see why it's related on today's daf exactly. We'll have to get into tomorrow's daf to see exactly why it's related. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer Achan Shacholku. Let's say if brothers are dividing up an estate, and once they had a lottery, Kivan Shalagorel, they divide up the estate by a lottery. Once they had this lottery, once one of them had this lottery, Kanukuam, then all the brothers involved have acquired it. Meaning, say once one person had the lottery, his portion, then all of them have divided it. All of them have divided up the estate, and it's a final transaction. And what's the reason? My time. What's the reason? How is the first one done at Kinyon? By having a lot drawn in his favor that he's not able to go back on it. How does that work? So Amar Rabbi Lazar Kitchilas Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Lazar says, yeah, a lottery works to divide property up like the way the land of Israel was initially divided. Just like the land of Israel was initially divided by a lottery, as it states in Bamidbar chapter 26, verse 55. So we say Matchila Bagoral, just like the division of the land was by a lottery, Avkam Bagoral. So too, we see that the lottery, just like it worked for the tribes when they were dividing up the land, so too here too, a lottery works as a kinyan, and therefore they're able to acquire it in that case. So the Gemara says, there they had specific types of lots, i.e., they had these little boxes and they put in them these lots, and each one would take the lot in that manner. So do they have to do it like that exactly? And also they use the Urim V'Tumim. Well, and they used it through the Urim V'Tumim. What's the Urim V'Tumim? Rashi says that the Urim V'Tumim was a piece of paper with God's name written on it, which was placed behind the Choshen. And so that would help the stones light up of the Choshen Mishpat. So if that's the case, here we don't have the Urim V'Tumim. So how can you say the lottery works? So Amar Ravashi, Ravashi explains, they both wanted to work in this manner with this benefit that they're both that they're listening to each other and they're agreeing. Therefore, that's how the transaction is working. Each one is getting a benefit that they want this to take place. So that's actually going to be the formal kinyan, this benefit that they're each getting. In consideration for that benefit, the transaction takes place. We see from here it says that Eretz Yisrael was divided up. The land of Israel was Tchila Begorah, was divided up initially by the lottery. Reminded of a story, there's a different type of lottery called the Gorel Hagra, where the custom is you open up a verse from the Torah, and that verse is going to give us direction in our life about which way to go. So Rabbi Aryeh Levine, after the 35, the Lamed Hay in the war for independence of the land of Israel, after they were killed in the Gush, Al Kedosh Hashem, not all the bodies were able to be identified. 12 of the bodies were unable to be identified. So Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank asked Rabbi Ari Levine to help identify the bodies, and Rabbi Ari Levine used the Gorah Agra to identify the bodies. So I was thinking about that in the context of Tchilas Eretz Yisrael B'Gorah, that the land of Israel at the beginning of it was divided up through a lottery, and that was how our holy ancestors acquired the land. Itmar Shnei Achim Shachoku. So we learned two brothers who divided up an estate. Boa and Ach Medina Sayam, and after they divide up this estate, another brother came to them from overseas. Rav Amar Baltol Machokes, Shmuel Amar Mekamsin. So basically, two brothers divide up the estate, and then a third brother came. So what do we do with the estate now? Rav says, well, the initial division was done without the third brother, and he has a share in it. So therefore, the whole division is canceled, and you have to come back and since it was divided improperly, we have to redivide it from the beginning. Ushmuel Amar Mekamsin. Shmuel says, no, each one of the brothers, Mekamsin is like, they tighten, meaning say each one of the brothers has to take a third of his portion and give it to the brother who came from overseas. Like, for example, if you had 6 fields, each one took 3 fields. Now each one has to give to the other brother 1 field, so that now he has 2 fields. And so therefore, this is a the other approach. So Amar Rav or Rav Nachman, who Rav the Amar Batal Machokes, according to Rav, who says you have to redivide the whole thing. Alma Hadar Dina, we see from here. Now, once the division happened without the third person, you go back and redo it. El Meyatav, if that's the case, Hani Beit Tlasa the Kaime, also Beit Treme Nayupolik. Let's say you have 3 partners who are or brothers who are found in the city, and 2 of them went and divided it up their partnership through a lottery, and they or possibly not through a lottery, but Rashbam says through a lottery, and they divide in front of the court without the third partner knowing. Would you say that there too also the partnership is canceled? The division that they made is canceled, but we don't say that because since they went to a court, it's a valid division. And so we see from here with 2 partners, even without them, their friend knowing, if they divide in court, it's a valid court. And so therefore, we're going to challenge Rav, because Rav says Batal Machokes. So we're challenging Rava. So the Gemara says, excuse me, this is what Rava said to Rav Nachman. So Hachi Hasha, the Gemara says it's not the same thing. Rav Nachman says to Rava, Hasam there with the 2 people divided without the third. Nechisi Adata de Beitlasa Meikara. The 2 partners, they went down into the court in the beginning to divide it 3 ways. And so therefore the third person didn't lose anything. So even though if he was there, he would have a portion, but in the lottery, but nevertheless, they did it dividing it 3 ways. But this case of the 2 brothers, they didn't divide it with the 3 people from the beginning. And so therefore the division was a mistake because everyone took at the outset more than his portion. And so therefore Rav says it's canceled. So in the case of the partners who went to the court, they divide up in 3 ways. But in this case, they didn't initially divide in 3 ways, and so therefore Rav says it's canceled. So I'm Rav Papa Abai, Lishmul, the Amar Kamsin, according to Shmuel, says they each give a portion of theirs. Remember the Kamdina that we see from here that once, even though a portion of it happened before it was canceled and it's going to be valid, so is that what he's saying? Because each one took it properly. Meaning to say each one took something that he could take, but he didn't take it in the appropriate amount, and that it helps under those circumstances. But Rav and Shmuel both say, let's say you have a core b'shloshim ani mocher. Let's say you have this case that we were talking about in yesterday's daf. You say, I'm selling you this core for 30 stilayim. He can change it up until the last point because it's not a valid sale, because each core is considered like one sale. And so as long as he hasn't done the Mashiach on all of it, it's not canceled. But if he would say Kor b'shloshim seya b'selani mocherach rishon kaneh, but if he says I'm selling you this core for 30 seya, each seya for a selah, then he acquires it right away. And if you're going to say like Shmuel that kom dina, that it's a valid transaction, why do we say in the first case that they can go back from the sale? But because since he got the core according to what they agreed at the beginning, and even though he just took 29, we see from here that what he had drawn was coming to him in the end, but he just didn't take it in the proper amount. And so just like brother Shmuel says that they got their pair, also here in this case, he should get their pair. And Gemara says, no. No, that case is different. The rabbi is limited in that case because the rabbis wanted to do something that was good for both the purchaser and the seller. That they said it's not a valid sale until you do everything, because we want to make sure that there's no price discrepancy. And that's the case over there. And we'll stop here. This is today's daf yomi. A big shekoyach to everyone. Today's daf.